practice how to draw this eye in charcoal pencil. Okay, so I'm going to start out with the human eye right here. Okay, so with the human eye, find the approximate height to width ratio, whichever eye you're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to measure. I'm going to measure using the pencil. Now your point of measurement could be from this point. That's where the upper eyelid is, the bottom part of the upper eyelid. That's where your upper eyelashes come out, okay? And then, so that's going to be my top, and my bottom will be where the lower eyelashes begin. That's the lower eyelid, okay? So that's my height, 1. Okay, and then I'm also going to measure from the right corner of the eye to the inner corner of the eye. Okay, so that's 1 and about, I will say 4/5. Okay, so 1 and 4/5. So I'm going to create a box first. I want my height to be about this high. So that's my height, 1. That's my 1. And then my outer corner, I will put right here. 1 and 4/5 would be about like right here. That's where the inner corner of the eye is. Okay? Alright. Another thing I'm gonna do is measure the angle, okay, from the inner corner to the outer corner. It's going a little bit upward like this, slanting upward towards the right a little bit. So if you compare that to the hand of the clock, it seems like it is between 2 and 3 o'clock. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw that angle into. So once that happens, here is the corner of the eye. I'm gonna go ahead and draw multiple of these angle lines. So right now I'm not really sure where the corner falls. Okay, so you can just go ahead and draw multiple of these lines, parallel lines. And then what I'm gonna do is start doing a quick gesture drawing of the shape of the eye. It's like an almond shape. Okay, and if you need to, feel free to do further measurement of angles, like right here and right here. Okay, so it seems like the inner corner of the eye is somewhere here. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more pressure here. Okay, and then do more measurements. I'm going to give a little bit more space here because the eyelash is actually is like a little bit on top of that inner part of the eyelid right here. So I'm just going to give a little bit space on top. And then continue with your gesture drawing, determining the form. lower eyelid also is in two parts. There's the upper part. That's the part where it touches the membrane of the eyeball. And then there's the outer part. That's where the eyelashes are. Okay, so it's two parts. So here in the corner of eye, there's the pink part, the pink membrane. So leave that, the triangular shape right here, and then just draw the edge of the white part, the eyeball. And then just imagine kind of like how big the eyeball might be inside the eye. You know, it's eyeball is pretty big, kind of like this. It's a sphere. Now we only see like a part of the eyeball because of the shape of the eye, which is kind of like the opening. However, you can imagine where the eyeball is situated inside, and then like that. Okay. So imagining that the shape of the eyeball helps you to draw that line, that curvature right here. Okay. Alright. Now it's time to determine where the gaze is going. Okay, so this eye is looking towards the right side, towards the top. Okay, so eyeball is going to be placed not directly in the middle, but slightly off center, towards the right side, looking towards the top. When you do this, the negative spaces become really, really helpful. Okay, so now I'm kind of looking at the negative space right here, between the black part of the eye, the iris, and the rest of the eyeball right here. It's also like a triangular shape. Okay, there is a little bit of negative space on the bottom because the eye is looking upward. And then there's also this much of negative space on the left. Try to make the iris as circular as possible. Okay? It's close to being a perfect circle. Just like this. Okay, so I'm now going to press a little bit harder on the area where the eyelashes are coming out. So there's one part here on the bottom, and then on the top, like right on top of the upper eyelid, is where the upper eyelashes are. And the eyelashes kind of have like the direction of growth. So I'm just going to, find out the direction of the hair growth. So like the lowest eyelash right here and the first eyelash on the left. Connect them together like this. On the bottom side too. The first eyelash and there's the last one right here. And just kind of connect those lines together. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce the pupil, like the really dark circle inside the iris. Right here, in the center. Okay, and then I'm also going to draw in the highlights that I see. There are some square highlights happening. Okay. As well as the shadow. So typically on the top part of the iris, we see some shadow that's being cast from the eyelashes and the upper eyelid. You need to understand that the upper eyelid is kind of protruding outward. So if we draw the cross contour, it would be like this, protruding outward, and then that edge between the upper eyelid and the eyeball, it goes inward, and then the eyeball comes outward. But still it is, kind of inside. It's inside you, inside of the opening of the eye. Okay, so this upper part protrudes out like this. Drawing the cross contour lines can help. Okay, so understanding that, introduce that fold. The fold of skin on top of the upper eyelid. Okay, now like some of us have this fold of skin on top right here, and some of us don't. Like this. And then before I start shading with charcoal, I'm just gonna go ahead and finish drawing all the shadows I see in the iris. Okay. Oh, this eye also has some tears coming down. Or it's just like one droplet in the photo, so I'm just gonna go ahead and draw the shape of that droplet of tear coming down. I selected this image because the tear is an extra textural component that I thought might be really fun to draw. Right here. Okay. So I'm finished with the sketch part. Now I'm going to start shading with charcoal. I'm going to start off with all the dark elements. That's how I like to work. It's a lot easier, especially with charcoal, because blending is a really important part of using charcoal, right? So for me, I find it easier if you go ahead and shade in all the dark spots. And then if you want to create a soft edge or move around the charcoal powder, it's really easy to do with your fingers or a blending stump. Okay. Another thing is that with charcoal, as you move the charcoal around on the surface, the value tends to get darker. Okay, so I like to work on the darks first. The darkest part is right here, the iris. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying moving the charcoal around. So I've tried to shade in like the super dark areas, the shadows on the iris, but then charcoal, kind of produces this grainy texture, and I want this region to be really, really dark and smooth. So I'm just using my blending stump. And I'm just rubbing on top of my charcoal marks. Okay. One thing I'm focusing on when I'm doing this is keeping some of the hard edges hard. Okay, so because what happens when you use the blending stump is that you're blending out the strokes, but there are certain regions like here where I want to keep the edge pretty sharp and clean, defined. So I'm just kind of focusing on those areas. I'm trying to be careful not to blur out some of those edges. Now, wherever you see blurry edges, you can intentionally create those blurry edges using the blending stump. Okay, just move around the charcoal powder so that it's fading out, creating those blurry edges. So now, leaving the highlights, I am going to finish shading the areas in the middle, which are like the middle values of the iris. So the iris has a lot of patterns going on, as you see here. The patterns are created with the shadows, the middle value, and the lights. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to group the shadows together, making sure that the middle value doesn't become too dark. And then I'm going to take my pencil type eraser after this to erase out some of those highlights. So once I've erased the highlights, I'm gonna go back in with my charcoal pencil to redefine some of those shapes. And now I'm going to take the blending stump again and smooth out areas in the middle value that I've created where I want it to be softer. Okay, now if there is an area where you want the values to be lighter, don't blend it out with the blending stump. So the areas where I wanted it to be lighter is right here, towards the bottom. There are a lot of reflected light happening here. So I'm just using the pencil type eraser to erase out some of the highlights. So there's the eyeball. Now what you want to do is find the shadow underneath the upper eyelid that you've drawn out. Okay, so when I see the picture, there seems to be like two parts to the shadow. Like one part is extra dark. So treat that part like the occlusion shadow. It's going to be extra dark because there is the contact point happening. That's part one of the shadow. Another one right here. Make sure these shadows are connected through this passage. Another passage right here. Extends to the corner of the eye. Okay, so that's part one of the shadow. And then there's like a second part, which is one tone lighter. And this part is connected to this main shadow that I've drawn on the iris. It's connected as one. Appears again on this side. Like this. Okay, so find the passage. The shadow connects to the folds of the membrane here, and then appears again on the lower part of the eye, the lower eyelid. There's more occlusion shadows happening. Play with the pressure you're using on the head. So the shadow is appearing and then fading out again and appearing again here. Okay. Now, even though the white part of the eyeball seems like it's white, there is some value to it if you look at it. There is some value. Remember when you created the value scale, there was value from 0 to 10. So try to remember what that value scale looked like and try to give a number to this value. For me, it looks like it's about 2. 1 or 2, so there is some value to it. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to try to use my vine charcoal, which creates very light feathery grays, and try to capture the light value on the white part of the eyeball. Okay, and while I have the vine charcoal, I'm just going to create some soft shadows underneath the eyelashes, which is a part of the skin. So with vine charcoal, just put some marks or strokes close by each other, and then use your finger, clean finger, to blend it out. That's how you achieve these feathery grays. Okay, I'm also going to do the same thing on the top eyelid because there are a lot of shadows where the eyelashes are coming out here too. Now I'm going to get my peel-off charcoal pencil and then create the shadows where the fold of skin is happening on top of the eye. The kneaded eraser also becomes a really important blending tool. If you want to take out some value from the layers that you created with your charcoal pencil, you can just lightly wipe them away with the kneaded eraser. That way there is still the line work visible, however you're taking off some values so everything becomes lighter. So now I'm going to bring in my graphite pencil. It will be really hard for you to layer the graphite on top of areas where it's really chunky or it's heavily layered with charcoal pencil, as in here, but areas where you layered lightly with vine charcoal or the areas where it's still negative, you can work in with the graphite pencil to achieve more subtle values. Okay, so I'm just going to address some of those areas with the graphite pencil. I'm using 2B here, and the teardrop right here. I don't want the teardrop to become too dark, so I think the graphite pencil is more appropriate for this area. Again, start with the shadow right here, the occlusion shadow on the bottom of the drop. And all the cast shadows are 2 parts. So this also has the occlusion shadow, but then the rest of the cast shadow. Okay, and then identify where the highlight is here, and just fill in the rest of the area minus the highlight. use your kneaded eraser to erase the reflected lights on the bottom of the teardrop. And then use the pencil type eraser to erase off additional highlights that you see. Here's a passage of light. And then go back in with the graphite to define the shapes of highlights a little bit more. Now I also want to create some transitional areas within charcoal and graphite. Okay, so some of these skin areas that I've shaded in with vine charcoal, I'm going to go back and layer those areas with graphite. That way those areas become the transitional areas, so when you use charcoal and graphite both at the same time, it looks more natural because those transitional areas connect the two parts together as a whole. Get your eraser and erase off the highlights within the halftone that you've just shaded in. The highlights in the corner of the eye helps you to create the glossy texture. There's additional textural component in the eyeball, some blood veins. Don't draw too much of them, just couple of the most visible ones. It's like additional textural component, but if you overdo this, it kind of becomes scary. Okay, so just a couple of them will do. If you feel like it's gotten too dark, all you have to do is get your kneaded eraser and just blot out a little bit. And then rub it in with your finger. Okay. Now I'm ready to draw in the eyelashes. When you do this, make sure your charcoal pencil is really sharp and pointy. I'm just gonna grab the handheld sharpener to make it sharper. Okay, so when you start drawing the eyelashes, make sure to identify exactly where the starting point is. See, it's here, the area where I've marked the shadow with the fine charcoal. And look at the cross contour, the direction of the hair growth of the eyelashes. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. So pay attention to the individual strand. It's starting right here. The hair follicles is starting right here and then coming downward. And then going upward. Apply more pressure here on the bottom part and then just let it grow out like this. Okay. Now you don't have to draw every single eyelashes. Start with the most prominent ones. Okay, again, growing out from here, coming downward and then upward. So it's in a curve. Even though it's in a curve, the ones that are towards the center, they are foreshortened, meaning that the part where it grows out and then like the curve area is directly in line. So you see something that's closer to a straight line, but make sure to emphasize the area where it starts. Okay, so it comes outward and then let's draw a line going upward, like this. More pressure here, and then let it just grow out upward like that. Okay. Starting here, growing out towards the bottom, and then extend upward. Growing out, goes up. Some of them are shorter than the other. Goes up, goes outward. So inside the iris, there are some reflections of the eyelashes happening.